All right, you are live.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is the City of Battle Creek City Manager Evaluation Committee. It is 4 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We do have public comment available. So if there is any member of the public, this is the time to talk. I don't see anyone in our waiting room though. So I'll go ahead and give the phone number and give an additional chance to speak at the end of our meeting. The telephone number to call in is 312-626-6799. And then you'll be prompted to enter a meeting ID, which is 846-621-3255. So I'll give a chance again at the end of the meeting. The first thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was February 9th. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
I'd move for the approval of the February 9th meeting minutes.
Any discussion? Oh, sorry, jumping the gun here. Any additional comments on the agenda? We'll go ahead and take a vote then. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And there's none opposed. Great. So the next part of our agenda moves into any city manager report of performance highlights and concerns. I kind of thought that might tie into stuff that we're going to talk about later too. So I'll turn it over to you, Rebecca, for a little bit and do with this time what you will.
Katie, can I just confirm that the motion was for the minutes, not for the agenda?
Oh, for the minutes. I'm sorry. Did I say agenda? I misspoke. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, the motion itself was to approve the minutes. Thank you. All right, Rebecca.
Thanks. I'll be brief.
Okay.
This is the first opportunity for the City Manager Performance Evaluation Committee to see the new reports as approved by the commission. So it does look a little bit different than what we have seen in the past. I hope that you find it's beneficial, but please know we are open to questions and comments, about what worked well with this reporting structure and document style versus anything that we would want to change. So really you're seeing a threefold. You're seeing the triennial report, which is really that work plan document that was created once the commission had established our revised priority-based budgeting community results and definitions. Then different than we've done before, staff put a draft work plan together with the projects that they anticipate on the horizon for the next 2 years and made sure, one, that they aligned with our community results and related definitions. And then they were in a format and a way for staff to provide regular updates. So we'll talk about that triennial report, or what we call the work plan. That was the first document. Then a document that you are very familiar with is the agenda tracker. We're trying to make sure that we are keeping the commission informed about what we see as a staff coming forward. So I will not only provide that to the performance review committee, I also try to provide it in my weekly updates, at least monthly, if not bi-monthly, especially if there have been changes. So the agenda tracker is not new. And then lastly, another new is updates to the City American Rescue Plan Act projects. I know commissioners have been asking for this, and as we try to prepare all the reports, it became clear that it was probably easier to just include it with the documents for the Performance Evaluation Committee. And then that's probably the best way to keep all the commissioners apprised of status of those particular projects. So that's what you see and you received. It's available through a link on a SharePoint site. And I also provided it to the commission in PDFs. But you can imagine that work plan is quite large, with the 9 results. And so, if you think that there's an easier way to share that, please let us know. But that's really all I have. And then we can go through the reports, Vice Mayor, and I'm happy to answer any questions or highlight some of the things that we would like to highlight.
Sure. And we did ask the other commissioners to bring forth any comments or concerns before this meeting, and I have not received any. So I'll give this time to our commission members here if you have any highlights or concerns regarding city manager performance. I'm not seeing anybody. So we'll move on to the actual updates and the tri-annual report. And we'll give Rebecca a minute to screen share that. It is divided into the different sections that coordinate with our work plan and the priority-based budgeting. So we'll work our way through those. And if there's anything that catches our eye as we go through, we can stop and discuss as we go. Oh, Rebecca, you're muted.
Yep. Are you seeing that?
Yeah,
that
I sure
report?
do.
Okay, now I'm trying to figure out how to see you all again because you are gone. So let me see what I can do here. Well, okay, we'll go this way. All right, so what you are seeing, it's really awkward because you can see it, but I'm going to have to do it on my screen. So the first result in the report is economy. So you will see the first column of the spreadsheet talks about what that means, how we define economy. So the first indication was the business-friendly city policies and services, and then the definition, which would be in column C, is creates a business-friendly environment that encourages business and economic growth. So that is consistent throughout all of the tabs. And then you'll see the specific work plan items, and these were all approved by the commission at the time this whole format was approved. So very specific work plan items and those metrics that demonstrate that we're meeting that item. And then in column F, you will see then the first quarter updates for each one of those work plan items. I will tell you we're having a bit of a formatting issue in SharePoint, and I'll give you an example. I really like that in column D, like SBD is bolded. So you know that's the small business development team. But if you go down farther, the DPW right there is not bolded. The only way to bold that would be to completely take them all out and put them back in. I just didn't think that made a lot of sense or good use of staff time. We are still working to see if perhaps there's a fix for that. But that's why you'll see some of them that weren't bolded, because if they weren't bolded at the time they were entered, then it's a little bit of a challenge to do to fix that. But so you'll see each one of the department's work plan items and then how they have progressed in quarter one. So I will scroll through slowly, but if you have questions, I think from economy, and now I'm moving kind of into supporting local business, supports local workforce, I'll come back, business attraction, retention, attractive to residents, visitors, and tourists, and then lastly, sustainable development. Knowing all that we have going on, I hope that you recognize I'm pretty proud of staff for, there will be some inevitably that we will have to say we have no update to provide in this first quarter. But I think that you'll see for the majority, we've at least thought about it and acted in some way. It may not bring us closer to what success looks like, but it is on the radar of staff. And I know maybe that seems too simplistic. However, when you think about our 11 departments and all of the components of each result, I think it's pretty remarkable. And then why don't we just add a global pandemic on top of that and a whole bunch of unknowns when it comes to our revenue streams. So I'm happy to share any specific things under economy that the committee would like to before we move on to the next one, which is safety.
Any comments, or should we move on? Just overall, I do like this format. And the bolding of of those terms is small potatoes. It's a lot of information to manage, and it looks really good and it's easy to follow. So far I like this. Hopefully it keeps treating you well.
Great. Then I didn't see any further commissioner hands or anything. I'll move on to safety. Again, same format. So our themes under safety are law enforcement, feeling of personal and physical safety, emergency response, safe travel and mobility, crisis response, and fire protection response, and lastly, police protection and response. So here's where you have the majority of updates coming from police and fire, and DPW. A little bit from the city manager's office, but certainly police and fire have been dealing with a variety of things. One, staffing concerns. Two, calls for service on the rise. Three, the pandemic impact on calls for service. Certainly in fire, the redeployment of firefighters from Station 4 and having to respond to calls differently in that particular district. That's certainly an ongoing. And then some things that just haven't been able to get restarted fully, until we have finally seen some of those improved COVID numbers. I know I talked to Chief Blacker about the cops and clergy meeting, and they feel very strongly that it's better in person. And so they're giving it a little time so that they feel comfortable meeting in person. But they're looking to kind of re-engage all of their community outreach and engagement activities as our weather improves. So now that, we're starting to think we're not going to see any white stuff anymore, they are working to make sure that they're being engaged back out in the community as they were pre-pandemic. And so slowly, but also as staffing allows, and I can talk a little bit about, some of their recruitment challenges. And I think I have in my weekly updates in that I think there's even an update, and I just read it recently about, we had 5 in the academy. Well, then that was 3, and then 2 were taken. So we're down to 1, so that's kind of what's happening when you talk about staffing, because every law enforcement agency is vying for a very small pool of talent. And they're going to pluck them right out of the academies if they can, and unless we have secured them, differently. But also, not only are we focusing on recruitment, but we're focusing on retention. I think oftentimes we do focus on trying to get new people to come in, and we lose sight of those who have been really keeping, that department moving forward. And what can we do to recognize those efforts? They're filling the overtime shifts, they're deferring vacation days and et cetera, so that, we can staff shifts. And that's true for both police and fire. So I will stop talking about safety and ask if there are any particular questions.
Nothing for me. Anyone else? Seeing heads shaking.
Okay. Next, I'll move into transportation and mobility. Those themes include ease of mobility for all, beyond cars, connected, accessible, reliable transportation network, traffic law enforcement, and public transportation accessibility. Again, here is where you'll see some kind of no progress yet, waiting on something, whether it's a draft document, whether it's the end of a pilot program and we're seeing what the next steps are. I think particularly also we're entering construction season. So a lot of DPW, they're still analyzing inventories, taking calls for concerns areas, and making sure, one, we're on track for the program that we have planned for 2022. And if there's additional funding coming from state or federal, that we're plugging that in to enhance where possible. I think what Carl would want me to tell you is that what we have feared was happening is as we bid these projects, they're coming in 30 to 35% higher than the engineering estimates. So while we feel like it's been wonderful to receive bumps, from the federal and state level for transportation and streets and et cetera, we're still not able to do more projects because the projects themselves are costing more. And I know that's incredibly frustrating, and we hope at some point that levels itself out, but that is what we're seeing right now, and certainly will impact our construction projects. I mean, we haven't gotten there yet, but just take City Hall. We ordered the terracotta a year and a half ago, and we still don't have it, so that's what we're experiencing as far as getting materials. I think the other big thing to point out here is the end of the BC Go pilot, and what a huge success the BC Go pilot was. Now we have to figure out how do we fund it going forward. I think in the presentation that Mallory and Doug did for the City Commission, in that best case scenario, they can support 19 BC Go vans, and we're operating that right now with 2. So figuring out what that looks like, one, will they receive another grant? MDOT has been very promising. We'll just have to see if they come through with some additional funding for BC Go, and then continue to talk with other municipalities and employers who are receiving the benefit for their employees and others to use BC Go to get to jobs and appointments and et cetera. I think those are all my notes on transportation and mobility. Any questions?
Doesn't look like.
Okay, I will move back. I will move to the next tab, which is utilities. We have defined that as safe water, stormwater and drainage, the internet, utility, and utility offset. So some of the things we have been learning here, particularly when we were looking for an alternate source, water or additional treatment or viable options, we determined that the one source we were looking at was not viable. So we're thinking about other things, advancing the filtration system at the Verona. And so while I look at that and I'm thinking, oh man, that nothing really did happen. Well, it did really happen. It's not going to happen the way we had originally visioned, but we are now pivoting, to do what we can do or what we have available, particularly in water source. So safe water is always high on our priority, as also we continue to work through the replacement of the lead service lines. And then also included here is the river naturalization project. That's a huge one from an economy point of view, but as well as a utility point of view. The river is a huge natural beauty and it's an asset. We're working to see if we can't maybe open that up more without endangering the city of flooding. So continuing to work through that project, which is large. And then broadband or the internet, we certainly know that we now have the report out of the county broadband task force. I anticipate that they'll be in front of the commission with a presentation in June to highlight their findings and to lift up the need to coordinate to fill the gaps that study has revealed. We have certainly set aside dollars in the ARPA dollars from the city side to be able to support broadband initiatives. And we want to make sure that we utilize that data so that we're leveraging our dollars to the best of our ability. And we've always said the city would be willing to leverage our fiber network as well. So I think that's ongoing, and I look forward to their report to the commission in June. And I just had this talk with Linda too. We were really gung-ho about converting our utility bills to postcards. It's a savings. It makes it easier to print and to get them out. But what we learned is the communications that we ourselves as a city, as well as some of our community partners, put into stuffers, into that water, is really important. And, we weighed the pros and the cons, and really we felt like as a communication tool to keep our bill format right now the same. And then we can reevaluate it later back to the postcard. If we find that isn't a good way for people to send messages, information, educational pieces. So I thought that was really, it was a really good discussion. And, I think we're in a hold pattern right now just to see if that were to change. Any questions on utilities?
Doesn't look like it.
All right. Environment, physical appearance, and design. This includes our sustainability plan, our quality of the environment and our physical appearance and design, long-term sustainability for those items. What are we doing to continue to be an attractive community and thinking differently, conservation, and then development. Let's see where my notes were here. Lost my note there, but you know what? I'll have to wing it on this one. I was so good to have notes on each tab, but apparently I did something. So anyway, we do have first quarter updates on most things. Again, in some areas, we are just in the data collection process. So the work on the Sustainable BC Committee to prioritize the action items out of that plan, they're collecting the data to determine, are we meeting the metrics within the sustainability plan that the commission approved? Are we allocating enough staff time to do so? And then listening to the members of that Sustainable BC Committee. I think what's hard is there's so many needs and wants of the committee, and staff is trying to make sure that we can at least meet what has been laid out in our sustainability plan, but also not thinking in the future, having a vision, but seeing, balancing certainly those two things. Let's see. Yeah, so we have some Battle Creek Transit vehicle replacements. I think I don't need to say it. Mallory is a whiz at applying for grants and is usually very successful to replace equipment like buses and et cetera. I think the other thing I hear from DPW is we're taking a deeper look at, that we converted some of our fleet over to propane. And as we see increases in fuel, is that meeting our need, or do we need to think differently about propane versus electric? So we are doing those analyses with Steve Seaman in Fleet, having the discussion with Patty Hochschmelowisch and her environmental team, and that's kind of a to be determined. But again, I think being an innovator with the propane vehicles was the right thing to do. And if it is meeting the need and this creating the savings, great. But if it's not, then what are our other options when we think about reducing vehicle emissions and basically our carbon footprint as a municipality? I don't think I had any other note, except if you're hearing, Community Services is doing the property surveys beginning this month. So a lot of times commissioners will hear from people like, hey, what's going on in my neighborhood? So we're doing property surveys in MPC areas 3 and 10. And I think they're underway as long as the weather holds. And then I think you've seen we've had already several environmental cleanup days, and one's coming up, I think, for electronics. We had the styrofoam early on, and now I think electronics, and we have started the whole yard waste season. And so that's good. And then we continue to pick up bulk items. Yep. Any questions about that? I do. That was the other note I had about trees. We are getting a lot of feedback right now from concerned residents about trees. And we know Consumers Energy is right now in a pretty big project to clear trees. And so a lot of times the tree clearing that people are seeing, for example, along the off ramps and on ramps, for example, from Helmer onto 94 and et cetera, those are not city projects. Those are MDOT projects. And I know Sherry knows this, but before MDOT does anything, they go through a substantial review process, including an environmental review. And it most always includes, we're going to take some out, but we're going to work with the city to put some back in. Where does that look like and where do they need to go? So right now we're in a big, heavy kind of clearing mode. But we will do all we can to communicate about how they're going to replace. And certainly if it's a city project, we let our neighbors know in a variety of ways. And the commission is going to see on their next commission meeting a proposal to consider a contract for a city forester, so that we are being very intentional about planning our tree work. We have a tree committee and it's been great. But we've reached that point now where if we remove, we need to replace. We've kind of hit that balance area, and now we have to make sure that we're being strategic and environmentally friendly as we think about how we replace some of these trees. I know I've already heard from employees how sad it will be that spring is coming around City Hall and we don't have our beautiful flowering trees. However, those diseases were bad. And so what we can do to bring back maybe some color later on, but also not, put in like the foundation of City Hall or other trees in danger because we haven't addressed the ones with disease. So I know I'm sad, and that's why I keep this picture as my background, because I know I won't see that this year, and it certainly will be missed. Questions about this tab, environmental, physical appearance and design?
Not seeing any.
Okay. Arts and culture is our 6th tab. It talks about venues, activities, diversity, and support. A lot of these things are handled either through our small business development team or coordinated out of the city manager's office. you know that, and there's been huge articles this week in the Inquirer and on Channel 3 and others about the McCamley Hotel project. There has been some confusion because two articles talked about demolition using the word McCamley. So everybody has to remember that there's really two McCamleys. There's the McCamley Hotel and there's McCamley Plaza. So and I've had several calls come into the city manager's office about, I can't believe you're going to demolish the hotel. No. We're just going to demolish a portion of McCamley Plaza. And so we've been answering a lot of those questions, but really cool when people hear that's what the hotel is going to look like and all of that. We're excited about that particular project because we know its importance to the Kellogg Arena as well as Festival Market Square. Yes, we are continuing work about the mall property. I've spoken to all commissioners about some of the ideas that the city has around redevelopment of that area. We continue to write the scope of work for a plan for the Beckley Road corridor, which certainly includes the mall facility. I heard yesterday that all the permits have been approved and paid for the Horrocks transformation at the former JCPenney. I've heard a little bit of rumor about they're thinking about keeping both locations. John Hart was able to speak with them. That's not completely off the table. However, they're experiencing what lots of employers are experiencing in staffing, and their concern is they won't be able to staff two locations. But I appreciate the fact that they remain open for that. But I know that their focus right now is on their new location on Beckley. I think the other thing I wanted to mention here is Farmers Market certainly is gearing up to start, and it will look differently this year. We are working with the current Farmers Market group about transitioning market management away from that group and to a new group. And that new group may be a community partner. I know that CCDC has had a conversation with Jeremy Andrews of Sprout and Penetrator Events, and we're looking at a potential collaboration there to think differently about the market, hoping to grow not only the vendors that are at the market, but certainly the customer base. We're excited that the Kellogg Company is welcoming employees back to headquarters. This week was the first week. And so it is exciting to see more foot traffic downtown. Certainly it wasn't to the level of pre-pandemic, but I think as the weather gets nicer that we'll see more people outside. So encouraged by that. Any questions about arts and culture?
I have a question on the farmers market.
Certainly.
Is it going to be the same schedule Wednesdays and Fridays that we're aware of?
For right now, yes, but that is a topic of discussion.
I mean, Wednesdays I think are wonderful, but I'll tell you that Friday it just doesn't seem like it's doesn't seem like it's very vibrant on Fridays. It seems Saturday is typically when most people would go out, but I don't know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is. You're right. And I know that that's a topic of discussion. It's successful when food truck Fridays are going on and pairing with the vendors that are down there. Maybe we need to think about that it occurs with food truck Fridays. I know the Saturday concern is just the huge popularity of the Kalamazoo Farmers Market. And I think we can be just as great. So this gives us an opportunity to think differently. And if we think that we can get the numbers for Saturdays, please know we are certainly open to that. And I think whether it's CCDC that's managing the market or another community partner, I think they're open to whatever can help those vendors be successful and really kind of step up our game with the farmers market. And we've appreciated what we've had now. Please don't get me wrong. It's just thinking differently about the market as things change and as we have a different foot traffic in our downtown. Thanks, Jim. Any other questions about arts and culture? Okay, I will move to recreation. Here we focus on parks and active lifestyles, connected community, facilities and amenities. Here again, we talk about the Kalamazoo River Trail and increased river recreation in the city. I think that our Kayaking on the river has been really successful. I think some people forget we have 2 rivers, and they each offer different recreational opportunities. Certainly right now, the Kalamazoo River is tough because of those channels. The water moves. And as we know, unfortunately, as vehicles might enter, it's a very fast moving one. The Battle Creek River is a little different, and it offers a little bit more passive recreation, but we're doing all the exploration to make sure that we're utilizing that safely and, to the benefit for people who want to enjoy that natural beauty. Linear path is also a function or a highlight for us right now. Certainly, we are utilizing some of the county millage money, most of it right now, to repair and to improve our linear path. And we continue to work with partners such as the Urban League to also extend other green space areas in relation to the linear path. You know that there's a lot of work going on at Full Blast, preparing us for the summer season, certainly the pools, and that wonderful air conditioning that Duska and her team are so excited to welcome for the summer season. Now let's hope that we can get in all the materials and supplies in time for summer, but that is certainly on order. Yes, and their full slate of programs are being proposed, and we're seeing more and more interest in recreational programming. Questions about that recreation tab?
Just a quick question. When we're requesting the millage funds, what is the timeline for that? Like, what does the calendar for that look like?
That's a good question. And I think because it's a millage, it falls on the tax year, so a calendar year. But that always has to come before the commission for authorization to utilize it in that manner. And I think that just happened probably a couple of months ago. And I believe solely for the linear path improvement, we held the first kind of tranche of the millage money with this one so that we could combine the two to complete the linear path repairs that have been proposed. So I think it's a tax year. So we would know in the fall, late fall, early winter, come to commission and be prepared to utilize it like after January 1 in the spring, summer seasons.
Thanks. I just wasn't sure if it was always open for us to make a request or if it's just certain application periods or.
Well, it's, we have to submit to the county what we're going to utilize the annual distribution for. Okay. And that's why I think it's that what I talked about, kind of fall, early winter, and then distribution over the following calendar year. So I believe that's how it's set up, but I can certainly clarify that with DPW.
No, that makes sense that it's just the one time per year. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions about recreation? Okay, last but not least, the fund governance tab. This has a lot to do with internally facing services of the city, but not all. So governance includes accessibility, best practices, respectful, and collaboration and competence. So these really are looking internally and then how we show up externally. So for example, that the city acts in an honest, accessible, open, and transparent way and is engaging and responsive to its people. And we do that in a variety of ways. The first thing is how we show up to serve the community, whether you're a clerk at the treasurer's window, whether you're a firefighter taking a call, whether you're a DPW employee going into someone's home for a defective meter. We want to make sure that we are providing the best customer service, our best face forward. And so we're constantly evaluating and reinforcing the importance of that, you know, it's a better experience for both the city and our customers if we can kind of do it with a smile. Doesn't necessarily mean we're always going to get a smile back or a pat on the back. It just means that we do everything we can to make that encounter a positive one. So, you know, we do a lot of different types of surveys. We're talking about a broader community engagement strategy. You know, Chris Lucier and his work with Alavance is phenomenal, and it makes us and helps us think differently about community development type projects. And I think we have probably one of the best communications team in the state to make sure that we are addressing all the social media platforms, but also understanding that social media is not for everyone. Not everybody gets their information from the internet or social media. So recognizing that, hey, I think we should keep the stuffers for utility bills, or you know what, great idea from Jessica and Cassie that, you know, we're finding that the shopper utilization is high. Let's try putting our city newsletter in the shopper. That way we don't have two publications going out, and we're utilizing a tool that's already in the community and it's well established. So appreciate how they kind of think outside of the box. And that they're also thinking about informational podcasts going forward. But as you know, with the global pandemic, comms has had a lot going on, and we will continue to explore that, as Jessica said, in the coming quarters of 2022. There's the specific about the linear path. Are there any questions about governance?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, that's the biggest of the reports. I will
Yeah.
quickly touch on, I hope that I can go out and do this while I'm still sharing screen. You just tell me. I'm going to go in and quickly, I'm not going to pull up the agenda tracker. I'll pull up the ARPA projects first. Go up. Make sure. Are you seeing the ARPA spreadsheet?
Yes.
Great. I think. Okay, great. So this outlines the city projects that were approved by the commission for use of ARPA dollars. It's categorized by department. We specify what the project is, the original cost estimate, and any revisions we've had to do, and then a description, and then certainly the first quarter update. And so I've had several commissioners ask about where we are. You know, as you can see from the first report we went through, there is a lot going on. And from the city ARPA projects, you know, some projects will move quicker than others. Others will be slower because we have to, one, get the procurement process in place. Two, we have to go out to bid, those types of things. And some are simply operational support. So that very first one, ARPA is going to help cover the airport subsidy based on some changes in the BC TIFA budget. And so we've kind of we've outlined when we think that will occur. And a lot of that is already being discussed as part of the fiscal year 23 budget process. I can't believe that our budget workshop is May 5th, and that's only like 3 weeks away. So, you know, there's a lot of work going on right now to prepare the fiscal year 23 budget. And it will be the first budget that the commission will see our use of ARPA funds, first and foremost, to offset lost revenue due to COVID, so that we can balance our budget now and then going forward. Because really, we were just talking about this in the budget meeting yesterday, is we only have this fiscal year 22, fiscal year 23, and a portion of fiscal year 24 to utilize that lost revenue, because it has to be committed by December 31st of 2024. We have until 2026 to spend it, but we have to appropriate it by that. So when you talk about lost revenue, that will have to be it will have to be handled by the end of that fiscal year 24. I know everybody's anxious for that. I just shared with you, anxious about the City Hall facility. And yes, even our employees are like, what are you doing? Now there's double fencing around the building. Yeah, there is, but there's a purpose to that. I don't profess to know all of it. However, it's one, to keep everyone safe, public and staff. Two, to allow the contractor a little bit more flexibility to move around as they repair and replace the entire facade around the building. So that's why you see that there. The retaining wall, because City Hall really has three components. We have the facade, we have the retaining wall, which you see a lot like at Michigan and Division. And then we have the entrance on the first floor and redesigning the first floor so that it's safer for our employees and easier to be accessed to be accessible by our residents, including those with disabilities, those that English is not their primary language, and those with any sort of hearing or visual impairment. So we're taking all that into consideration as we rethink that first floor, because right now it is not as, I think, as friendly as it could be. So those are the three components for City Hall, and you'll see that they're all going to be at different timeframes. We need the facade work to complete before we can begin the retaining wall, as you can guess. We don't want them to replace the retaining wall, and they're doing something up above, and that's not helpful according to those engineers. The broadband certainly is on hold until we coordinate better with the countywide task force and we understand the gaps within the city and how we might be able to leverage that. I'll just scroll down through these. The equity audit is almost complete. We are entering the workshops around the DEI implementation plan in the month of May. So I'm really excited. I've seen a draft report. You are going to see a draft report soon. The first public unveiling of that will be at the Human Relations Board next week. So it's coming to you. And we will continue to include community in those discussions and make sure we didn't miss anything and that we're kind of on the right trajectory with one, what they've recommended, and two, kind of what the next steps are in the implementation plan. Please stop me if I'm forgetting anything. Again, a lot of things are no progress for a variety of reasons. One, remember, these were just only recently approved. So we're trying to kind of get our hands around it and work with purchasing. Really appreciate the work of Chris Huff, our purchasing manager, and her team, because ARPA dollars have incredible purchasing strings and requirements. And so she has just, I mean, she knows what we're supposed to do and she's keeping us on track for that. So I appreciate that. And a lot of these have to go through purchasing. And so we really appreciate her and Neil's helping us through that. The fire projects that are listed here, many of them are on hold while we finish the facilities assessment for all the other buildings. I would hate to, improve an HVAC system and they come back and say, we're not really sure that this facility is viable or should be utilized in this manner anymore. So recognizing need, wanting to do the analysis and then make informed decisions once we have those facility assessments in hand. So that's why a lot of those say on hold for the facility assessment. Let's see, I'll keep scrolling down. But again, if you have questions, stop me. A lot of IT stuff is also our new IT director. I think this is his second week. So as you must have known, he feels like he's drinking from a fire hose. He's just trying to get to know everybody on his team, let alone the projects that he is inheriting. And oh, by the way, it's budget season. So do you got that budget under control? Because we just need that so we can get the budget books out. So he's doing a great job, but I do understand this is new and doing our best to help him through it. And Chad Frine, who's done just a phenomenal job in an interim capacity. Oh my gosh, we kind of just said, Chad, you're it. And he's done a great job. And he's doing such a good job helping onboard Shadi, bringing him up to speed on the people in IT, which are wonderful, as well as all the projects that are ongoing and on the horizon. Go down farther. The Spider Tech Victim Connection System you will see coming to commission. I think it's the next commission meeting. It'll be paired with those tasers and VR goggles that we demonstrated for the commission. So I know Chief Blocker is excited for the commission to consider those. Talked to you already about flash flood. So we are working with contractors at Bailey Park. And we are meeting, the utility billing is a hard one only because there's some really good programs at the state level and we want to make sure we're leveraging the dollars that we have. So Linda and Tammy Giannunzio and I our meeting okay, where are we right now with outstanding utility bills? How many of our customers do we think we connect in either of the two programs that are currently going? And then what does that leave us as a gap? And we will utilize the ARPA funds for the gap. And I think I hit the end of that report. Any you want me to go back to or discuss further? I hope that you see that even the ARPA projects, we are making strides, even though some are still in a holding pattern getting through, whether it's bidding, procurement, or just staff time.
No, it looks like a lot is in motion already. You haven't had much time to work on these, so. Any questions, folks?
With the ARPA funds that we just approved for the community, I'm guessing then those will be added to this report as well in the future.
You know, that's a really good question, and that's an unknown. If that would be what the commissioners would like, it's easily can be added. So you would have a city tab and a community projects tab. We haven't gotten that far yet because we haven't distributed any money. I know that Laura has made email contact with everyone, but we're already getting questions about, you know, I need to use the budget differently, can I? So figuring out what that looks like, what needs to come back in front of the commission, you know, if it's a substantial change from what you were considering. And then yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
So Laura, and I'm not familiar with her. I know that you identified her in a report, Laura Ott. Is she, I mean, obviously these funds are federally, you know, federal funds, so they have to be used specifically for that. So if a community member wants to use the funds differently, does Laura have experience with federal funds? I mean, I just don't know. I mean, is the city liable if one of these organizations does not use the funds appropriately, and we have a person kind of in charge of that?
Great question. I'll start with the first one. She does have the experience with federal funds, but I don't think anybody could come in with the experience for ARPA because it's so different, even different than our traditional federal funding models. So she has, since she started, she's really been educating herself, one with purchasing, one with finance, one with Ted and I, and reading through all of the guidelines, the long version and the Cliff Note version. And then is going to reach, and we're working with Jill on the template. We have the template done. Jill needs to bless it. And then each one will have, it'll be the same in like how funds are distributed, but their addendums will be different. Okay. I'm blanking. I can't even think of a project right now. Okay. RISE. This is your funds for food distribution, and anything different has to be approved. You can't deviate from this budget, and this is how it will be distributed. I think some of the easier ones will be those that just said, hey, in year one, we're going to do it all. You know what I mean? The harder ones will be those that are splitting up their award in 3 years, and then how we distribute that. And then the complexity. Some have, you know, salaries and benefits, supplies, contracts, those types of things. Those will be more difficult kind of to track, but we're doing all of that work up front so that every organization knows that's what we're going to need. If you're going to pay salary to somebody, we're going to need a payroll report, and those type of specifics. Okay. And for those who are not an identified and recognized nonprofit, we have to have who their fiscal agent or fiduciary is, a signed agreement that we are going to serve as the fiscal agent for this award. And we can we're filling the gap that they don't have familiarity with federal funds. And we know we have a couple of organizations in that position. But we're learning as we go. We're going to have hiccups, and we're trying to do everything we can up front. But no, we're just going to have to see how this flows.
Thanks.
I just want to agree that it would be helpful to see updates on how the community projects are being rolled out. I'd like to see it in a separate document, though. I like this as part of this committee because it shows work that you're doing internally. I think you can only control so much when it comes to the community projects though. So maybe if it's a separate document.
Okay. We are also intending to have an ARPA dashboard that reflects both the city projects and, lost revenue, as well as the community projects. We just haven't landed on a model yet, and there's not a lot to update, at this particular moment in time.
Yeah, whatever form it takes, just as long as we can see what the progression is.
Okay. Just to clarify, it's easy to have it as a separate document, but do you want that provided to the city manager performance evaluation committee like this one is, or differently?
I think that one would just go to the full commission. What do other folks think? Because I don't think that report doesn't really directly represent your work as the city manager, if that makes sense. Like there are so many X factors there that we're just curious as to how things are going, but I don't think that that's the basis for evaluating you. Does that make sense?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I agree with having a separate document for the reasons that Vice Mayor Ferris said. That's pretty much not under your control, and I don't want it to be something that we hold you accountable for because I don't think that that's fair. So definitely a different document, and I do like the idea of a dashboard. I think that that'll be really cool once it's done.
Commissioner Sophia, did you have something else?
I was just going to say, if it's a separate document, you could send it out to the commission periodically, like you do the agenda tracker.
Okay.
This is where we are with the ARPA fund projects.
Okay.
Here we just got rid of a bunch of your reports and now we're adding some back. I feel bad, but I know that you're keeping track of it regardless. So if there's some sort of dashboard or format that works for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to thank the committee and the commission because while these reports were much easier to prepare, as far as, it was still time consuming, don't get me wrong, but I feel like these are more comprehensive and get at specifically, the goals that the commission set out for the next 2 years. And is pretty much a live document. So we can go in and update this whenever. You can go in and see it whenever, but just know when this committee meets and it's time for a report update, then we kind of freeze that in time and make sure that you have it and the entire commission has it. But I appreciate this change because I found it has been really helpful and a little bit easier for me and my team to prepare.
Good, that's what we want to hear. Do we want to talk about agenda tracker at all? It's pretty straightforward. Everybody had it attached to their packet today. Nothing really stood out in my mind that needed to be discussed. Anyone else?
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
Here we go.
So that brings us to the end of anything and just committee discussion, which we kind of done all along. Does anyone else have anything else to add before we adjourn? I just want to thank Rebecca for all of her time in filling out all these little boxes. And, it is nice that you can add them over time and that, I hope this isn't something that you just have to rush to do at the end. I hope that it is a living document, like you said, to save you time. And thank you, Vicki, for putting together the agenda today. Commissioner Morris?
I just wanted to say that at the beginning you said that you would go back to public comment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that. Chad, do we have anyone in the waiting room for public comment?
Nope, nobody joined us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot about that. So if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn for the day. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us as well. Always good to see your face.